Hello, everyone. Welcome to Meticulous Talks on May 1st. I am cursedchords.
I'm Hithroc.
So bans are happening in less than a week now. May 7th, I think, was the kick-in time for the new bans.
Yep.
And thus, we decided that given the fact, especially that these bans are going to be reshaping the metagame quite substantially, in core as well as in harmony, we'd share some ideas in a similar manner to what Sim did last week. Although, as Hithroc kind of reminded me, and as I put in the stream title down there, uh, we had a certain preference with our decks.
Yeah.
Uh,
Somehow we ended up with all purple decks.
yeah, it struck me during, well, I guess looking at the decks that Sim did last week that there actually was almost no purple there. Whereas, sorry, I just saw a warning from OBS. Hey, I think our stream is still fine.
I mean, looks fine from what I see.
I don't see any drop frames. Oh, okay. Yes. Whereas we have purple decks all over the place.
Yeah.
So
Someone's gotta play purple if Sim doesn't.
yeah, absolutely right. Purple. Well, most purple decks being control or losing mimics, which is a relatively sizable loss. But at the same time, Meadowbrook's going away too. Which the
Yeah.
reasons for that have been talked about extensively already. So I have two, and Hithroc is one. So I suppose we should start with one of mine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And let's start with the rarity list, I suppose.
The only list that doesn't have a purple main.
True. So the actionable idea behind this deck is actually inspired by a conversation that I saw in Discord just last night, where Bugle was musing on the potential combination between the T-Rex Troublemaker and Rainbow Shine, and also as a sort of secondary thing with the main with Rarity. The idea being that T-Rex the Troublemaker says at the start of a face-off you get to put a card from your discard pile on top of your deck, and then Rainbow Shine would allow you to draw that card if you ordered the triggers properly. So it is recursion for any card you want off the start of a face-off, so long as that face-off involved T-Rex. And you can use Rarity the main to put a unicorn at that problem and force the opponent to start a face-off with T-Rex whenever you wanted. Given that costs only 1 AT, this is F-stop for any card.
Ah, that's why Rarity is main here. That's pretty cool. I like it.
And I just happened to have this deck sitting around because I had done Rarity for Adventure a little while ago. Also worth pointing out that Rarity with Sans is a really good combo as well, because you name Unicorn token with Sans, and then you put a Unicorn token at the problem, and the opponent can't confront that problem for points anymore. Or,
Or defeat Tyrek, right?
well, they can defeat him, they just won't score points from him.
Yeah. Which is the big thing because he has points too. Which is not insignificant.
Yes, thank you for joining, Grandpa's. Yes, I just mentioned this is based off of the discussion the Bugle was talking about in Discord yesterday. Although, like, as I'm looking back and reading it, I completely missed the line where he talked about Bodyguard, which was also a pretty good idea given this deck. If I wanted to put Bodyguards in, I would, I guess, cut Zecora probably for it. I don't know if I can see anything else in here that's a significant cut for it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because Bodyguard and Sakura fill functionally the same role in that, well, Bodyguard is a source of AT, technically, kind of. Not really, not the same way that Sakura does it, but they kind of fill the same role.
Yeah, I mean sometimes it's easier. Like, I mean, since your deck is like its entire idea is to guarantee that you'll have face-offs with Tyrek, right? Because of Rarity, and you want to have face-offs.
Mhm.
I think bodyguards will give you more value than Zikora because, like, while they both give you AT, bodyguards like way of generating you AT kind of aligns with the
Right,
what your deck does.
right. Put the unicorns at Derek's problem, and then, right.
Yeah,
Although it's worth pointing out that that is counter synergy with Sans, because if Sans is naming unicorn token, then I'm also countering myself.
yeah, true.
But well, you can name other things
Just
with
retire
Sans too.
Suns with bodyguards when you need to score points. Easy.
I mean, actually, given the fact that you have that any card recursion, that's actually maybe not a bad idea. Yeah, you can just get him back the next time opponent faces off with Tyrek. Huh. Uh,
Yeah, I think that's like something you find out during the experimentation.
yeah, yeah. I
Like you
suppose.
test one thing and then
Yeah,
another thing, see what works, what doesn't.
fair to point out. Given that this deck was based on the discussion in Discord yesterday, totally untested. Um, but the sort of deck that this was based on, the original Booming Business purple deck, I played a couple games with that and was pleasantly surprised with its ability to survive. Um, and well, adding a third color to a deck is always a somewhat fraught experience, and
Yeah,
see how it works out. But I think the colors are uh, relatively strong here. Anemoy with a suggestion for Traveler Spike to move stuff to Tyrek's problem. Reasonable point. Spike only has 2 rec, so he's not that hard of a sell. What would I don't know what I would cut to put him in. Fills somewhat the same role as Levitation Meditation, I guess.
so I have a question as well.
Sure.
Why Chaos Magic Blast and not Belly Flop? Is it just because of the wreck?
That was the main concern, yeah.
Okay.
Like we don't have any 3 rec pink friend or 3 power pink friends. So I
Yeah, so it needs
assumed,
to.
yeah, it would be a little bit yeah, perhaps. Well, yeah, that's something that comes out in testing. If you don't actually have that many of issues holding 3 rec, then yes, belly flop would definitely be better, especially in the bodyguard version of the deck.
Yeah. Yeah, with bodyguards, absolutely, because you get double the unicorns.
Exactly.
And I mean, if you want more wreck, you could just replace fire with speech, right?
Yes. Yep, that's a reasonable idea. In fact, maybe those fires should be speeches, given that we are in a post Meadowbrook world. Resources aren't that
Oh
vulnerable
yeah,
anymore.
I will talk about that on my deck,
Okay.
as
And
well as about fires.
yeah, and so now resource triage, as it were, is actually a thing again, and this deck has, well, certainly high priority resources other than its color fixing resources. So yeah,
Hmm.
speech probably does make more sense than fire. Although for what it's worth, well, you are running Tempest Shadow.
Yeah, but that's the thing about my deck, though. Uh, do you want to get to it, or yeah.
Is there anything else? Any comment you wanted to make here?
I mean, I really like the idea. Like, okay, so Rainbow Shine and Turic is like a cute interaction, but I really like the rarity here. I think the rarity is what makes what makes me think that this is a cool idea because she actually like enables you to force face, because like Tyric by himself doesn't enable you face-offs, right? Because
Mhm.
the opponent can still play around it. But if you keep putting stuff at their troublemaker, they have no option anymore, and I think that's really cool. That's that's my favorite part about this deck.
Okay. Yeah. Rarity's flip condition is her main weakness. Well, yeah, it's certainly her biggest weakness as a main. Um, you have let's see, it's at the start of a yeah, because it does have to be a problem face off. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you kind of have to, well,
Yeah, if
either
you're against control that never does face-offs, it's gonna be kind of hard.
yeah, basically.
So another,
Anyway, oh sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
Also,
I was just gonna segue to your deck. So if you have,
okay, but I just wanted to point out that it's interesting to see a pink purple deck after Selena ban. Like, oh,
it's true,
those cards are banned. We can now play these decks. Plays purple, pink post
exactly.
bans.
Yeah.
But I'm actually leaning into purple pink myself with my deck.
All right. So yeah, that's a let's have a look at your deck then.
Yeah. So I know what you're thinking. Hithroc, you're playing blue, purple, white again. It's nothing original. We've seen this many times before from you. It's your anti-farming deck. And yes, it is. But the reason, like, I think what really killed this deck, like, obviously this deck lost mimics, right?
Mhm.
But I think impact Middlebrook's impact on this deck was higher than this deck's impact, like from having mimics, because um, a lot of blue purple, at least the way I played it, relied on like good resources. Like I wanted to set up a board. I was really greedy with my entry, because usually people don't remove your entry resources, right? They have more important things to remove. And Middlebrook just like threw all of that out of the window, right? You can't really rely on any of the resources anymore. You can't really set up a resource board because it's going to be wiped away eventually, right?
Yep. I mean, I
Probably.
can look at this deck and see that Meadowbrook would remove half the cards in it. So
Yes, it's this deck actually has like a pretty equal distribution of every card type. It has a little bit more friends than everything else, but everything else is like 11, 12 cards. So yeah, and that's why I'm bringing back this deck. I think it has more chances now without Middlebrook, even though it doesn't have mimics, because look at all those resources, right? You want to remove every single one of them, but you can't. And removing every single one of them also means you're probably not removing my Fire of Friendships, which means I can go really greedy with my entry. This deck has 3 colors and only 5 entry cards.
hmm,
It's 3 rushed makeovers and 2 fires. And I think that's fine because fires will probably be safe, hopefully. And also, all of these cards except Pegasus Carrot, I think, and Groger's Lair are 2 rec. So a fire will be enough to play anything, right?
right. The rec curve has been quite carefully uh, curated, I guess. Pegasus
Yes.
Chariot is 3 blue, I guess, as well. But
Yes, and it's actually one of the like most questionable cards here. Might be replaced with something else because there are a lot of options here. Another thing that really like helps this deck out is that purple now has tricks again. We have Levitation, Meditation, and Spider Surprise, which are fine tricks. Before it was Detention, which was main phase, not really a trick, right? And we had I don't remember its name, but it has the Naysayance art. The one
uh,
that like you reveal a card and you
Power
move
Shift.
with. There, that one. I didn't really like that card. I think it wasn't that great. Levitation Meditation is just a straight improvement for it. So yeah, so that's another thing here, right? Purple got some really good events now. Well, I wouldn't say they're like really, really good because I think Purple Orange has better ones, but they're still like good, better than what we had before.
Yep, absolutely.
Without
Spires.
Meadowbrook, yeah,
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say Spire Surprise being relatively unconditional removal. Well, no, it is just unconditional removal, really. So it's back to a much better.
Yeah. Grandpa's points out this is some greedy entry. Yeah, I've always been greedy with my entry, and Middlebrook, lack of Middlebrook lets me be greedy again. Maybe this is too greedy. Maybe this needs a little bit more entry. If I needed more entry, I would probably add another fire, maybe, or something like that.
Right.
So, more comments about this deck. I can now run 3 high Ts since it's harder to remove all of them at once, right?
Yep.
And you might ask me, hey, this is a Tempest deck. Where's the grubber? There's no grubber in this deck. What?
That's a good point. I mean, there's
So
lots of other troublemakers, but
yeah, there's 11 other troublemakers here, I think, or maybe more. Maybe it's 12 actually. So
11. Right.
yeah, so I'm experimenting with this. I don't know if it's better to do it this way or not. Maybe it's better to bring grubber back. But the idea is that everyone runs fire anyway, although we were just discussing that maybe you should replace fire with speeches. But like as soon as everyone stops running fires, maybe I'll bring grubber back. But as long as everyone runs fires, instead of bringing grubber on your first turn, you bring grogger and exhaust him to gain 1. So
Oh, the other
effectively,
Grogar. Okay.
yeah, effectively flipping your main for 1 AT. But it's actually flipping your main for free because on the first turn, it's very unlikely that they will defeat Grogger, so he'll probably stick around for the next turn as well, right?
Okay, that
That's
seems reasonable.
yeah, that's one thing. So you're effectively flipping your main for free, and the starting problem, the purple one, says that like if they defeat your troublemaker, they score 1 less point. Even if they like defeat Grogger early on, as long as I don't have colors, they will score 0 points for it. So I think it's a pretty good start. It's kind of like Grubber, but it gives you 80.
Okay, yeah, that's
So
a reasonable.
so that's the thought behind not including Grubber in this deck. But maybe it's not as good of a thing as I think, and maybe Grubber is better. So that's a thing to experiment with, as well as like exact quantities of each troublemaker.
Right. Well, so like the Grubber Fire like metagame tension is something that it's been in the meta since both of those cards were in the meta, basically, right? Um,
Yes.
and so that's necessarily going to be with us as long as it exists. Um,
Yeah.
I guess I'd like some input on the other troublemakers as well, because admittedly, that last deck that I talked about, one of the steps that I went through was okay, get rid of the mimics. Now, what am I going to replace it with? You've got a lot of options here, or
So I don't know. Like I went with Cozy for now. She has like kind of similar power. She gives a point, which is annoying, but she makes them retire friend. Maybe Cozy is not as great. Maybe there's some other troublemaker there. Like definitely, you'll not find anything as good as Mimics, right? Especially in core.
that was kind of the
Uh,
point of banning it. Yes,
yeah, very sad. Let's unban Mimics, but not Middlebrook.
took us
Uh,
only. It hasn't even been banned yet. You already asked for us to unban it.
yeah, I want a ban appeal. So I think troublemakers like is something to experiment with here, and maybe this deck could use like a little bit less troublemakers and more tricks, because without mimics you can't really rely on them like not playing dilemmas anymore. You have to like do something else about that, right?
Mhm.
And this deck does nothing about that, right? If they play dilemma, you kind of have to accept that.
Right.
Or use your tricks, which there aren't actually that many of them. There's only 4 cards that are immediate, right? But that's like exactly the point. I think there's like some tuning that can be done here too, depending on like how this deck ends up playing, because I haven't tested it much. I have tested
Right.
it a little bit.
Right. So, as I remember the old style of this deck, it was a kind of a deck that blurred the lines a little bit between control and
Farm.
farm. Yeah, you have you have enough epics in here
Yeah, there's a
to
bunch
work
of
with.
epics here. And like since we have Rarity exposed, we can bring a bunch of those epics back, right?
Mhm.
Uh Like Legion of Doom is a really good epic. It scores you 3 points, and it's like your opponent is unlikely to defeat it, especially if you have like embers and shields around, right? Like I think in this deck, it's more likely they will like play Dilemma and avoid this Troublemaker altogether than try to defeat it, right?
Pretty much.
Which is a good thing because they're not scoring 3 points and they keep stacking those counters for as long as they're not getting rid of them, right? So that's one thing. Like another thing about Troublemakers here is that like they're just good epics, you know. Grogger lets you find, even though it's now main phase, it still lets you find other Troublemakers, and I don't think there is much risk that they will defeat it. I don't know. It depends on what deck you're playing against, and again, like a bunch of Troublemakers can be sideboarded as well.
Right. Yeah. I well, to whatever degree, I kind of looked at SimStream from last week and it's like, oh, so this is what the meta is going to look like. And there was one farming deck that they covered, orange, orange farm with Grogar, which farm is always something that you need to consider.
Yeah, but like this deck, I don't think farm is one of this deck's concerns because I don't think Grandpa's calls this deck anti-farming for
For
no
no
reason,
reason.
right?
Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, but like yeah, I think things can very well be adjusted here. But this is like the I don't want to say sketch, but like prototype maybe
Yeah, prototype, sure.
of again blue, purple, white. With like it doesn't have too much white though. It has like 3 white cards, 4 white cards. So there isn't much white. So it's not that greedy of entry if you think about it, because most of the things you're going to play is blue. Uh, and there are like some cards I'm a little iffy about and still like try like that Doctor Hooves. That's why it's a single copy of him. He has a very simple text, right? He has Meticulous, and when you put a card on top of your deck, he moves.
Hmm.
But there's like no cards that put cards on top of the deck here except himself. But that's the point. The idea here is that when you get to that stage where you're like want to farm troublemakers, all of them, the idea here is that you will use hooves to like move at the start of the turn to some troublemaker and defeat it with just him because this deck can do that.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what this deck was doing before. Way before when core was not rotated yet and we had portals. Like it sometimes it would just portal something to a troublemaker just so it can farm it. Doesn't even matter much what. And those like are the only 2 immediate moves here. That's well, kind of immediate. It's Doctor Hooves and Ultimate Organizers.
Right.
So yeah, that's the deck.
Yeah. Looks like a return to form, for the most part.
Yeah.
And I
Hopefully
remember,
it does better now without Middlebrook. I
yeah,
think I think like losing Mimics is really big, but I think like the existence of Middlebrook just didn't allow this deck to exist. Now it at least has a chance.
yeah, it's
At least this deck in like in this kind of form where you run a lot of resources and try to control.
right. Yeah. And there were a couple of decks around, this one, Google's Rarity list, that worked on having lots of resources in play. And honestly, I think that's probably good that there should be such decks to work with. As has been pointed out, this is a somewhat extreme, perhaps, version, yours, relatively tuned to get a lot of value out of its resources with relatively small entry.
Yeah,
But something in this vein could exist, I guess.
yeah,
I sure hope so.
yeah. And I'm really curious how starting with Grogger will play out. I think it's a neat idea.
Yeah, the theory sure seems sound. Uh, yeah, you're functionally, as you say, flipping for free. You can relatively place him, I guess, or
Yeah, with Grubber, but like another reason I have this Grogger here is that even though he's a free for one troublemaker, I think if you have a trick, you can sometimes I generally don't think this troublemaker is all that good. I don't really like him because like to gain an AT from him, that means you'll probably like he'll be at 0 power, right? But in this deck, it doesn't matter as much, right? Because you'll have a bunch of power on top of that. Even if he has 0 power, you might have like +7 anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Like Ember and Flash Magnus Shield is 7.
hmm Yeah. Like I was gonna say that, you know, um, your almost all your friends have a color other than purple. So like basically, unless it's Starlight, your like effect from your starting problem is going to be going away pretty quick. But it's also true that basically any of those friends that you play, you're setting up some other defense for that troublemaker anyway.
Yeah. And like if I feel that they're going to defeat it soon, I can just hold on to playing my cards. Like there's no rush. There's no rush to play my cards. I can keep them in my hand until you defeat this Grogger, and the effect will not be as relevant.
Hmm?
Basically, I control when that effect happens, which is
No,
good.
that is an opening, like a nightmare opening. Well, nightmare for the opponent that I'm seeing right here. Like, yeah, Grogar, and then I just hold on. Okay, I'm gonna play Starlight. I'm gonna play High T. Just a bunch of stuff that gains me AT, and it's still a 0 point troublemaker. Ugh.
Fun. Would you like a yellow Parasprite instead?
Um, I'm gonna go with the devil I don't know, probably. Still.
Okay. But yeah, that's my deck.
Alrighty. And as for my second one, no surprises to anybody, I'm sure. Um, it's purple orange with some changes from the last version that I actually used, which that was actually a long time ago now, when Udon first dropped. But it's the same general idea. Uh, Flip early, play a lot of events, Legacy Leech, Celestia, and then uh, go on and win. Uh, the new additions are Rockhoof, which I feel like makes a lot of sense. If you can have a 10 power Celestia, why not have a 16 power Rockhoof to go with it?
That's true.
Um, Monumental Evil, which is a really cheap um, way to, well, deny one dilemma each turn. Uh, we, well, aside from Rockhoof, we're not going to be able to get to the Unity 7 at the time. But that's not the main reason it's there. It's there to be that counter dilemma play.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anything else? I changed a couple of events out in order to get there. I took out the in the zones because I realized after playing it that that card wasn't really the reason the deck was good. Um, right, and I think it was actually maybe it was fire and I changed it out for speech, or maybe it was speech already. I'm not sure about that. Um, I would consider Lusterdon in here actually. Now that I think about it, that card probably should be in here too.
But instead of what?
Instead of what? Good question. I mean, it would be instead of one of the other purple entries. Headmare maybe.
I mean, Headbanger looks really good in this deck, though. Like, all of your events are 2 or less, except Legacy Leech.
Right, and you don't want to copy Legacy Leap anyway.
Yeah, doesn't do anything.
I mean, yeah, that's a really good point. Um,
I think, like, if you had to choose between Headmare and Magic Pony, I think you would get rid of Magic Pony because I think Headmare like provides more value
mhm,
over time. Not over time, but like in the end, it just takes a while to realize it.
yeah, and it's a fair question to ask, I guess, whether this counts as uh, a like it it is an aggro deck, or at least I think of it as I guess it's kind of more of a mid-range deck, really. Because like the orange events, sudden closure, heat wave, and a fair few of the purple events too, are pretty good at control in the early game. Like we
Yeah.
can actually, in the first few turns, play it kind of slow, where we're doing more interference and such, and then Legacy Leech, and then pile on a bunch of big cards, and suddenly we're the aggro deck. Um, so the way it plays is
Yeah.
kind of interesting. I suppose I should point out as well, Torque Wrench also is a great card for this kind of deck. Uh, so it essentially turns all of those other events into resource removal, uh, which is, well, pretty good.
Uh, have you considered Tempest Open Skies, which also turns your all of your events into
Into moves?
yes.
That's at Unity 10, right?
Yeah, but like it doesn't seem like you'll have problems getting
Hmm.
purple unity here.
Good point. Good point. See. I would cut highlighting maybe for that, I guess. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
that's a fair point. Probably, or even, let me see here. I don't actually have that much synergy with same day. Starlight, really. Probably get rid of a couple of those.
Well, and I mean torque range and the open skies we're considering.
Well, yeah, okay, fair point. But it's a good point. The Tempest does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think she has some other ability too. Oh, it's
Is
showy. It's showy.
Oh, it's showy.
Yeah, I remember.
I mean, that's not nothing.
I mean, given that it moves things away, that's like
Mhm.
synergetic.
Let's see. Animoy suggesting 3 sudden closures and 0 spider surprises.
I
Um,
think that's a fair point, but like you're not always going to have orange, right? Because
right. Orange is, well, let's see. Beach, Makeover, and the only 2 orange friends are Rockcliffe and Torque Wrench.
yeah, like
Oh, yeah.
and like that card has a free rec, so like don't wrench alone will not do anything unless you uh make a resource leaf play.
Hmm?
Does Torque Wrench trigger of it doesn't, right? Of dilemmas leaving the play.
It does.
I don't think it does, right? Because there's
I
two
was I
problems
was
while
gonna
in play.
say it does not. Yeah, but that's a. It's. I would probably want to look into it, but my instinct would be to say that it
Yeah.
doesn't.
Grandpa says it doesn't, which
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah.
There are problems while they're in play, but they're not problems when they enter discard pile. So I guess if this card said when an opposing resource enters discard pile, then it would trigger.
Then it would trigger. Yeah, that would be my assessment. Worth pointing out, I guess, for those folks out there who ever play with Torque Range, he gets her counter when a resource leaves play, not just when you dismiss it. So if they retire one of their resources for anything, or um, have a resource attached to a friend who leaves play, or etc. etc. You get a counter
Yeah,
for that.
good with
Um.
Catajack.
Yes. Good point. Point. Um.
Why Hyper Beam and not what's their name?
Luna's future.
Luna's Fishers, yeah.
Right. Uh. And it is a fair point that we don't have many unicorns in this deck. Uh.
But I guess you don't have many things to banish either, right? Because
Right. I mean, Luna's future does make some degree of sense. I think. Um. I think I did have Luna's future in the original. Let me take a look. And
yeah, just looking what you would banish here. Like, there's no troublemakers to put counters on, obviously. And like, if you were to banish, your like only option is magical pony, really, right? There's nothing else.
Mhm. No, it was only Hyper Beam in the original.
So I guess Hyper Beam does make some sense.
Right, and it did well. One rec less in purple doesn't matter much. It flips for more than Lunar Future, doesn't it?
I don't think one less wreck uh, even like matters for your deck, really,
Yeah, no, not in purple.
because ideally you flip your main as soon as you can.
That is usually the point of this main, yes.
Like, if you have to use Hyper Beam and your main is not flipped, that's something something sad has happened.
Mhm, mhm. Uh, so yeah, I think that could probably go either way. It's given that Luna's Future is almost necessarily just 2AT banish and opposing resource. Um, then Hyper Beam is just that with upside if I ever do have a unicorn in play,
Yes.
which I intend to most of the time.
Yeah, I probably will have a unicorn. Although most of the things here are not unicorns, but
It's true.
the unicorns that you have, they usually stick around. Unless the opponent removes them.
Yeah, which, well, Guidance Counselor is a relatively priority target, but Future Headmare would probably stick around, I think.
Yeah. Also, Future Hardmare is another card that synergizes with same game delivery. So
Same day, right. Yeah.
cool.
Anyway, yeah. And that's all we have today. Hithroc only had just the one deck.
Yeah, I had one deck because I only play blue, purple, white. But
But
I was actually considering pink for that deck, and maybe I should build like a separate version with pink because pink gives you like Trixie, and Trixie is lets you like portal exposed. You can do some fun stuff.
yeah. Well, yeah, Portaling Exposed was always one of your back pocket
Yeah, that
tricks.
was yes. You also get Pinky Sense, which is really good. Second, another card I wanted to like to suggest for this deck maybe for your
Hmm.
is Sunset Shimmer. She's another unicorn,
She's another
so
unicorn. Yes, good point.
there's that, and she's like a really cost efficient card with like a great effect.
Cost efficient, good face off trick. Meticulous is another is more synergy with
Yeah,
same
Meticulous
day.
too. I don't
Does
know what you would cut for it though, but it's a good card.
uh good point. What do you cut for the bike? Maybe like cheap. Also very good though.
You could cut one torque range,
Maybe. Yeah, I could see only
be
two of
greedy and
those.
resource removal, since like torque range is
Right.
multiple use resource removal, and you also have two hyper beams. So
Torque wrench and a well, yeah. We'd have to see.
yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what meta you're expecting because, like, if it's a heavy resource meta, you probably want torque range. But if it's a heavy friend meta, I think Sunset like is better
Probably
value.
better. Yeah, fair to say.
So yeah, cool.
Yeah. I you know personally really wish more people would play decks like this. I think it's a super cool inversion of what purple usually does.
Yeah, I wish just more people played purple.
Ain't that the truth?
That's why oops all purple. All three decks are purple.
Yeah.
And not just with purple, they're primarily purple.
Yeah, and that was unintentional. It really wasn't. Oops, I wasn't thinking of that. I don't know about you, Hithroc, but
Now I knew that I'm going to build purple, blue, white. Like there's no chance because I do believe that that deck is a better place now than it was before the bans. But we will see.
we will see. Absolutely. In when is Online Con 11? Soonish, right?
Uh,
Look up the announcement. Or Grandpa's is going to tell us that.
May 8th
Oh yeah,
to 9th.
that's the day after the bans happen. So next weekend.
Yeah.
So we shall see. I guess. Well, both of us reserve the right to sign up with decks other than these. I'm sure.
Now, I think if I will play, I'll definitely play the deck. Well, or at least like it will be basically that deck, except maybe with a couple of card changes, or maybe not.
Mhm. So, with that said, here's hoping to everybody that your deck building experience is fruitful and creative in the post-ban world. It's going to be a good world, I think. There's a lot of new stuff open with
Yeah,
these cards gone.
yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, things will change. That's that's the goal, right? And
So
before everyone plays blue yellow again, it's just the entire tournament just blue yellow.
that would be unfortunate, I think.
I think we should do a flash mob, like convince everyone to just play blue yellow.
It would. It's true. No one would suspect us as being the guys who started it, especially given we just did this thing of all purple decks.
Yeah.
Um, but no, we'll. Well, I'll be sticking with purple probably for the
Yeah, I'm not
foreseeable future.
destroying purple.
Um, yeah, Grandpa's. Thanks.
But see, that's a double game here because you think we just announced it, so we know that. So we will not do that. Or that's what you think, right? You think that we will not do that because we know that you know about it. But that's why we will do it.
Hmm, exactly. Following you every step of the way there.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you all for coming out and paying attention to us for these 45 minutes. We'll be back 2 weeks from now with another stream about, well, probably about the online con results, given that this time it's falling in between us.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's really helpful.
mhm. If you want to catch any, look at any of our prior content or this stream come Monday when I upload it, you can check us out on YouTube right over there. While there, feel free to subscribe or give us a like or a comment or anything. Want to see further ones? Yeah. Oh, wow. Excellent. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Not that like a what does this arrow button do?
Interesting. Yeah. Um, Otherwise, I have been cursedchords,
I've been Hithroc.
and we'll see you in a fortnight.
Bye.